New Guitar Day is here, folks, and today is a very special one because Fender have just released their brand new Vintera II line. Following the footsteps of the American Pro and the vintage line, Fender have tweaked their Vintera range with some incredibly cool additions and upgrades that we're going to go over today. Now, before we dive into a few selected guitars today, I'll clear up what the Vintera line is for anyone who may be slightly unfamiliar. When it comes to Fender guitars, you've usually got a choice of, two kind of main ethos. You've either got, the guitars that are a bit more modern, they're kind of pushing the boundaries to what the Big F are known for. Think like the Player Plus range or the Elites with their lock-in tuners and noiseless pickups. And then we've got the models that take direct inspiration from the guitars 60, 70 years ago that made Fender an absolute household name. The vintage designs, the Vintera designs. I think you can see what they're doing with that name. Now, just a quick note before we jump into looking at these guitars. There are a few that we don't have with us today, particularly there's a 70s Mustang and a 70s Tele bass, which are super cool additions to the Vintera line. If you do want to see us cover those guitars, do let us know in the comments and we'll do a follow-up video when we get them in their hands. But let's dive right into the first of the new line. Now, like usual, we do split the video up into chapters, so if there's a particular era or guitar that you do want to see, just check below there. But let's start off where it all begun for Fender in the 50s. Taking inspiration from the era that started it all, we have the 50s Vintera II. Now, the Telecaster in the line has taken inspiration from the Vintage II line and went for the elusive 1951 no-caster model. You can tell because it has no Telecaster logo on the headstock there, and a couple of other features that I'll touch on just in a second. Now, this model comes in two colors. You get the classic Blackguard Blonde that I've got in my hands right now, and there is a two-tone Sunburst also, which is actually just right behind me there. Now, the specs across all of the eras, the 50s, 60s and 70s, they all share a couple of features, so I'll kind of touch on those now, but it just leaves me a little bit more room for playing in the video just so you can hear exactly what these guitars are doing. Fender have used alder across all of the guitars, which is a super classic choice for them. Really resonant wood, but it's also not the heaviest as well, especially on some of their more sparse models, like the no-caster, which doesn't have the additional weight of, say, a trem or additional pickups or switching systems. Specific voicings for each era as well, which again I'll touch on just as soon as I play them, but for the 50s ones, you're thinking that more kind of spanky sort of trebly sound, and it sort of gets a little bit more kind of modern Fender sounding, I guess, as we touch on kind of the 60s and the 70s models. A 7.5-inch radius is used across the whole line as well, with 21 vintage tall frets, and they all have the same scale length of 25.5 inches, which is a proper kind of old school Fender feel, which for anybody who's played any of the vintage inspired stuff from the Fender catalogue, it's going to immediately feel pretty familiar to you. All the guitars have got glossy necks as well for anyone who's into that, and they all include Fender gig bags. Other features about the Nocaster that will make old school Tele fans super happy is of course the big baseball bat neck on this, which is definitely a lot thicker than what you would expect on say like a Player series, but I think anyone who's not tried this, you might actually find a bit of charm in this big huge chunky neck. You've got the vintage ashtray style 3 brass saddle bridge there as well, which is a really cool touch. You've got the 1-ply black pick guard on there, and also a little feature that some kind of keen eye people may notice. The Nocaster actually does come with the flathead screws as well, like they were made back in 1951, which is a super kind of classy touch. And of course, as I mentioned, the 50s pickups on these are super twangy, so let's check them out right now. So let's move just on to the next guitar, which of course is the Stratocaster. That is available in 3 different colors. There's the 2-tone sunburst, there is the classic black, and then the one that I've got in my lap right now, which is the ocean turquoise, which is maybe one of my favorite colors that Fender do. Of course, some features about the 50s Strat that some people may not be familiar with is that they have got a soft V-shaped neck on it, which again, not a kind of neck shape that they use on most of their kind of modern releases of guitars. It is quite a cool feeling neck, especially for anyone who, you know, has never tried one before. Basically what it means is that it does come to a slight point just kind of in the middle there. You'll know as soon as you kind of feel it there. Sort of, you know, guitarists like Eric Clapton and stuff will stick them on their signature model. So if you've played one of them, you know exactly what this feels like. And of course, with it being a Strat, we've got the classic 3 single coils there, 5-way selector, with it being the 50s one as well. We've got 1-ply guard, and it's got the classic 6-bolt trem on there also, which again, just a really kind of nice vintage feature. So for the last electric guitar in the 50s line was the guitar that I actually started the video with, and that being the 50s Jazzmaster. An absolute fan favourite and a personal favourite of mine as well. The 50s Jazzmaster comes available in 2 colours, the Sonic Blue that's in my lap, and there's also a Desert Sand version that you might see in the back of the video there as well, both featuring the super cool gold anodized guard. Now, with it being a later sort of release of Fender in the 50s, just before, you know, we moved into the 60s, the Jazzmaster actually had rosewood as its fingerboard as opposed to maple, which was used on all the kind of earlier Fenders, which we're super happy to announce with the Vintera II line. We have the return of rosewood to the Mexican models. The Jazzmaster opts for the more traditional C-shaped Fender neck, so immediately familiar to anybody who does play any of the Big F's models. So when it comes to the Jazzmaster's switches here, it's a really simple system when it's down at the bottom end. We'll just start there. So with the pickup selector, when it's facing towards your bridge, you're on your bridge. When you go to your middle, you're using both pickups. And when you go up to your neck, you're using your neck pickup. Master volume, master tone, super easy to sort of, you know, understand if you've used any guitar like this before. Now, where things do change a little bit is when you start incorporating this switch up here. Now, there's quite an easy hack that I got taught before I started working in a guitar store, and I still remember it to these days. So when the switch is down, essentially facing all your switches here, that's when all of that is going to be active, and you just use it as you would a kind of regular guitar. Now, when you flick this up. What essentially that does is it just activates your neck pickup here, but it's a much darker, a much sort of warmer tone than you would expect. And what actually happens is that all of these switches don't do anything anymore. Because what is actually going on is that the kind of rotary sort of, you know, wheels up the top here, they're the ones that are now controlling your volume and your tone. So it just gives you a lot of options to kind of play with, and you know, it's basically like if you want that kind of classic Fender-y sound, you stick there. And then if you want like a lot more kind of dark and warm, as I mentioned, just flick that up. Which that's on the same pickup there, so it does give you a lot of tonal options just, again, within the one instrument, which is super cool. And also, one of the huge features about the Jazzmaster as well being the tremolo system in there, so if you want to play any shoegaze or anything, you're absolutely sorted for that. But it is one of the cooler systems, I think, that Fender incorporate to their trems, and for anyone who hasn't used one, definitely check it out. So now that we've covered the 50s, let's move swiftly on to the 60s models. Now, I'm going to start with the Stratocaster for this one. The 60s Strat incorporates a few differences from the 50s, as you would imagine. First of all, comes in 3 different colours. You have Olympic White, you have a 3-tone Sunburst, and you have the Lake Placid Blue, which is, again, a super fan favourite, which is in my lap right now. Neck-wise, it's got a really, really comfy and familiar C shape, but it is worth mentioning that it is, to my hands anyway, it does feel just a little bit thicker than you would expect with modern Fenders, but immediately this model is going to be kind of what people know, certainly if they haven't played any of the vintage style Fenders before. The pickups are 60s voice, which you'll hear in the sound examples. They do have that little kind of less spank than you would expect from, you know, the 50s pickups that we were just playing. They're very much still undeniably Fender. Now, the Telecaster of the 60s line shares a few similarities with the Strat II, obviously, including the 60s style voiced pickups and the return of Rosewood, as I mentioned, on the Jazzmaster. So anybody who's looking for that proper Rosewood feel on a board, you're going to be really happy with the 60s models in this line. The biggest change that you'll notice on this being the switch from brass saddles to the steel saddles on this one. A slightly thicker neck than the Strat, but I would say it's very much still in that C shape. And of course, some other aesthetic changes. You've now got the 3-ply pickguard on here. And just with the logo, you've now got actual Telecaster on the headstock there. And even some little changes like the bigger style pickup selector switch. I know certainly a few fans of 60s tellies are going to be, you know, happy to see that. The 60s telly comes in a Fiesta Red, which is here, and also a Sonic Blue. So there's a couple to choose from. Let's check this out. it's worth giving some time in the 60s line to the brand new thin line telly that's included in this line. Now, spec-wise, we're looking pretty similar to the construction of the standard 60s telly in the Vintera II line. A couple of changes, of course, being that this is the thin line, so it's semi-hollow. It has the slightly larger pick guards on there, and it's got the kind of more new school, I guess at this point, the 70s style Fender logo on there, as well as the late 60s, early 70s tuners on that one, just to really make it authentic too. Now, just before we jump into the last era of the Vintera II, which is the 70s, as I kind of prefaced at the start of this video, we don't have all of those models with us today. Now, those ones particularly being the Mustang, which has a competition stripe available in two colours, orange and blue. Huge Kurt Cobain vibes if anybody's seen his signature model during the in Utero days. There's a Telly Deluxe, which has got wide range humbuckers and also a trem on it, which is a really kind of cool model, like combines quite a few things about Fenders, which is really, really cool for anybody who needs a kind of all-in-one guitar. And also there's the Jaguar, which has got a really cool maple board with big block inlays on them, and they come in a couple of cool colours also. As I prefaced at the start of this video, if you do want to see a follow-up video to this with those guitars in them when we get our hands on them, do let us know in the comments just down below. But last but by no means least, we have the 70s Stratocaster. Available in three colours, a three-tone sunburst, a vintage white, and the surf green, which is in my lap right now. The 70s era Fenders, I think, still continue to divide fans with some of the aesthetic choices that they made. I'll just come out clean and say right now I'm a big fan of them. So the biggest differences you are going to notice is the larger headstock on this one, with again the 70s era logo on there. We have the 70s styles tuners just on the back as well, which they still have the same sort of feel to them as the other tuners, just a little bit different, and you're still kind of going in that vintage style top loading style with it as well. Sticking around the headstock, you've got the bullet truss rod cover too, which again just an aesthetic choice and makes it a little bit easier to do any adjustments there. We have our rosewood board with a 3-ply guard, 6-screw trim in there, and the 70s voiced pickups, which we'll just hear in a second. Just another little feature as well, which just shows that Fender are really paying attention to this line, certainly, is the 3-bolt backplate here as well, which you'll notice on some custom shops, sort of like late 60s models, just as they were doing this transition. Just a cool kind of feature that just sets this apart from the rest in the line. So that was as quick an overview as I could have done of the brand new Vintera II line. I'm super excited to see some of these models show up in obviously the Mexican line, making it a little bit more obtainable for people who are into those sort of more vintage style Fenders, maybe to some people who have never tried them before. There is quite a vast, obviously, selection that you can choose from. So even if you have, say, tried some of these older models or the Vintera 1 lines, or even, you know, going back to the classic player designs from many, many years ago, there will definitely be a guitar in here that will suit you and you'll really fall in love with. But of course, you know, who are these for? What sort of scenarios would these work well with? With the vintage Fender designs, you know, they paved the way for a lot of, you know, the modern sort of features that Fender use. So it's always quite cool to kind of look back and see, you know, what they were doing, what kind of quirks they'll have, and just like a slightly different feel, you know. Certainly, it's nice to have a guitar that's got lots of bells and whistles on it, but when you kind of strip it down to especially something like the Nocaster in the line, you've just got 2 pickups, a 3-way selector. There's almost no hiding with a guitar like this, and it can be quite a daunting sort of experience, but also quite a liberating one as well, as soon as, you know, you sort of come to terms and got familiar with the guitar. But certainly for anybody who's interested in Fender guitars as well, if you're, say, going in and you're trying out a Player Series, a Player Plus, or, you know, anything that's on that slightly more modern side of things, pick up a Vintera II as well. Just check it out, see what you're thinking. It might not be the guitar that you planned to check out, but you might just surprise yourself. But what do you think? Are you excited to see the brand new additions to the Vintera II line? Are you planning on picking one up? Do let us know just down in the comments. And of course, give us a like, give us a subscribe. It's really helpful for the channel, and we do appreciate every single one we get on them. For every single like that I'll get on this video, I'll make a vintage version of your favorite guitar in the next video. But until then, I've been Keiran. This is the brand new Vintera II line from Fender, which you can check out on our website with links down below. Have a great day.